The morning began like any other on the ranch. The sun was just rising, painting the sky in soft pinks and golds. Birds were singing, and the horses were calm, their tails swaying slowly as they grazed in the pasture. Amy stood near the fence, sipping her warm tea, watching Lindy as she played near the barn with her favorite toy horse. It was too peaceful to expect anything strange or surprising. Then, out of nowhere, Lindy stopped playing. She turned slowly, walked toward Amy, and stood quietly beside her mother. Her voice was soft, almost like a whisper, but the words were clear. "My father is coming back," she said. Amy blinked, unsure if she had heard right. "What did you say, sweetheart?" Lindy looked up, her small face calm and sure. "Daddy is coming back. I heard him, in my dream, and it felt real." Amy felt like the air had left her lungs. She froze, her tea forgotten in her hand. It wasn't just what Lindy said, it was how she said it. There was no laughter in her voice, no playfulness, just a quiet confidence, as if she knew something Amy didn't. For a long moment, Amy couldn't speak. The world around her kept moving, birds still sang, wind still rustled the trees, but inside her, time stood still. Her heart began to beat faster, not with joy or sadness, but something far more dangerous: hope. She had buried that feeling years ago when Ty passed away. She remembered the cold hospital room, the silence, the tears that never seemed to stop. Since then, she had learned to live without him, to move forward for Lindy, to stay strong. But now her own daughter had looked her in the eye and said the impossible. What was she supposed to do with that? Amy didn't say anything in that moment. She only knelt down, gave Lindy a soft hug, and whispered, "Okay, baby." Then she watched as Lindy ran back to her toy horse like nothing had happened. But Amy's hands were still shaking. Later that day, Amy walked into the barn, needing space to breathe. The smell of hay and horses brought memories flooding back. She ran her fingers across a wooden beam where Ty once carved their initials. Her chest tightened. She had done her best to keep Ty alive in stories and pictures for Lindy. But this was different. Lindy didn't say she missed him. She said he was coming back. Jack found Amy standing quietly near Ty's old saddle. He noticed the look on her face. "What's on your mind, kiddo?" he asked gently. Amy hesitated, then shared what Lindy had said. Jack listened, nodding slowly. "Kids have a way of seeing what adults forget," he said. "Maybe it was just a dream, or maybe it was something else." Amy sighed. "But what if she really believes it? What if I want to believe it too?" Jack gave a small smile. "That's not wrong, Amy. It just means your heart isn't as closed off as you thought." That night, Amy watched Lindy sleeping peacefully, her arms wrapped around the old stuffed horse Ty had bought her before she was born. Her small lips moved in sleep, and Amy leaned closer. She said, "He's coming soon." Amy whispered aloud to herself. Amy stood by the window long after that, staring at the moonlit fields. She wanted to believe. Part of her already did. But could love and memory be strong enough to reach across time and bring someone back? She didn't know the answer yet, but she knew this. Her daughter's words had opened a door inside her that she thought was locked forever. And now, Amy wasn't sure if she could or even wanted to close it again. Amy wasn't the type to chase dreams. Life had taught her to be real, to be strong, to stand up no matter what. But after Lindy's quiet words that morning, words still echoing in her ears, Amy found herself doing something she hadn't done in years. She waited, not for a call, not for a knock on the door, but for something she couldn't explain. A feeling, a sign, something to tell her that maybe, just maybe, Lindy was right. That night, Amy didn't sleep well. The ranch was silent, but her heart wasn't. She tossed and turned, memories crashing over her like waves. Ty's voice in her head, his smile, his arms, the way he looked at Lindy, like she was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. Amy sat up and stared into the darkness. She didn't want to believe in false hope. But wasn't that what Lindy had given her? A tiny flame inside that refused to die? She slipped out of bed, wrapped herself in a blanket, and stepped out onto the porch. The night air was cool. The stars were bright. For a moment, she could almost feel him, Ty. Not like a memory, but like a quiet presence standing beside Her, watching, waiting. Was this madness? Or was it grief? Or was it something else? The next morning, Amy tried to act normal. She fed the horses, helped Katie with chores, and smiled at Lou like nothing was wrong. But her mind wasn't calm. She found herself staring off at the hills, watching the road more than usual. Every sound made her turn. Every hoofbeat made her hold her breath. She sat with Jack after lunch, unable to keep the question in anymore. Do you believe someone we love can ever really leave us? She asked quietly. Jack didn't answer right away. He looked out across the pasture, his face serious. Your grandma used to say love was stronger than death, he said. I never believed it, until she passed. Sometimes I still hear her voice when I'm alone. Amy nodded slowly. Lindy says Ty's coming back. She really believes it. And the way she said it, Jack, it didn't sound like a dream. It sounded like truth. Jack sighed. You want it to be true? Yes, Amy admitted, her voice cracking. But that scares me too. That evening, as Amy walked past the barn, she saw Lindy sitting on a hay bale, quietly brushing her toy horse's mane. Amy knelt beside her. What are you doing, sweetheart? I'm getting ready, Lindy answered without even looking up. Ready for what? Amy asked gently. For when Daddy gets here. Amy felt her chest tighten. How do you know he's coming, Lindy? Because I dreamed it, Lindy said simply. And when I woke up, it still felt real. She looked into Amy's eyes. Did you dream about him too, Mommy? Amy didn't answer. She couldn't. Her throat tightened, and her eyes burned. Yes, she had, and it had felt more real than anything in years. That night, Amy sat in bed staring at the ceiling. The ranch was silent again. Too silent. She whispered into the dark. Ty, if you're out there, if you're near, please give me something, anything. Then, just as she closed her eyes, a faint knock came at the window, not loud, not sharp, just soft enough to hear if you were truly listening. Amy sat up, heart racing. She crossed the room and opened the window. And no one was there, only the wind, only the stars, only the trembling in her chest. But she didn't feel afraid. She felt alive. The ranch hadn't changed much over the years, but something felt different now. Amy couldn't name it. The air felt heavier. The wind whispered in strange ways. Even the horses were acting odd, quiet, still, like they were waiting for something. It had been 2 days since Lindy made her quiet, powerful claim. My father is coming back. And now, Amy couldn't stop seeing the world through those words. She didn't speak of it again, not to Lou, not to Jack. But inside her, questions moved like thunderclouds building over the hills. Then, something happened that Amy couldn't explain. It started with a smell. Amy had gone into the back storage room in the barn looking for a saddle pad. The room was dusty, filled with forgotten things, old tools, gear, boxes sealed years ago. As she moved a wooden crate, a sudden wave of scent hit her. It was faint but unmistakable. Ty's cologne, that scent, warm, earthy, clean. She hadn't smelled it in years. It froze her in place. Her hand trembled as she touched the old coat hanging on a hook behind the crate. It was Ty's jacket, his favorite one. Amy thought she had packed it away long ago, but here it was folded neatly, resting like someone had just taken it off. And then she noticed a small handprint on the dusty shelf just below it. A child's hand. Lindy. Amy's breath caught. She called for Lindy, who came skipping in with her usual carefree joy. Did you come in here before? Amy asked gently. Lindy nodded. I wanted to find Daddy's jacket. Amy's voice shook. How did you know it was in here? Lindy simply smiled. He told me in my dream. Amy knelt slowly, staring into her daughter's eyes. She wasn't playing. She wasn't joking. There was something serious and strange about her calmness. Later that evening, Amy sat outside, jacket in her lap, staring into the fields. The weight of the jacket brought back everything. Ty's arms around her, his strong embrace, his smell, his warmth. She held it close, not as a memory, but as if she expected him to come walking up the dirt road any moment to take it back. She remembered how Ty once said, love leaves something behind. Maybe he was right. Maybe love was the only thing that didn't die. As the stars appeared above the dark hills, Amy whispered, Ty, if you're really coming, show me another sign. The night was quiet, but in her heart, something had changed. The next morning, Lindy was drawing on the porch. Amy walked over and glanced down at the paper. It was a horse, a man riding it, a woman and child waiting near the barn. Amy's hands began to shake. The man in the drawing had Ty's jacket, his hair, his shape. Who is this? Amy asked softly. Lindy answered without hesitation. It's Daddy! He's riding home to us. Amy swallowed hard. How do you know what he looks like on the horse? Lindy looked up. Because I saw him last night. Amy didn't know whether to cry or believe. Maybe both. She looked out across the field, and for the first time in years, she expected someone to appear. Maybe grief was still in her heart. But now, something else lived there too, something stronger. Faith. The wind over Heartland had always been strong, but now it carried something else. Something unspoken. Amy could feel it in the way the trees whispered, in the way the barn creaked at night, in the silence between words when the family sat together. The ranch was alive, but not in its usual way. It felt watched, as if someone was near, as if someone who once belonged here was walking between the walls again. Unseen, Amy kept her thoughts to herself. She didn't want to sound like she was losing her grip, but the truth, she wasn't scared. She was waiting, and deep down, she knew she wasn't the only one. The animals were the first to act strangely. Spartan stood by the gate longer than usual, ears twitching toward the hills. The other horses grew still during the evenings, looking toward the tree line. Even the barn cats, who used to scatter at the sound of boots, now sat calmly at the steps staring into the distance like they expected someone to arrive. Amy noticed these things. She also noticed how Lindy would walk to the edge of the field each morning, stand in the same spot, and whisper something to the wind. When Amy asked what she was saying, Lindy replied, "I'm telling Daddy I'm ready." Amy's hands trembled as she held her coffee that day. She watched her daughter like she was seeing her for the first time, not just as her child, but as someone who knew something Amy couldn't explain. That night, it happened again. Amy had another dream. This time, it was different. She wasn't standing in the barn or watching from a distance. She was riding beside Ty, side by side, just like the old days. The wind in her hair, the sound of hooves against the dirt. Ty turned to her, smiling, but didn't speak. His eyes, though, said everything. "You're doing great," they seemed to say. Amy reached out to touch him, but as her fingers brushed his sleeve, the dream broke. She woke up in tears. This time, she didn't feel sad. She felt connected, like Ty was trying to speak through the only door he could now reach her dreams. The next morning, Lindy had already drawn a new picture. This one showed Amy and Ty together, riding horses with Lindy between them, holding both their hands. She had drawn a sun over them and flowers on the ground. A perfect day, a perfect moment. Amy stared at it for a long time. It was almost exactly like the dream. She hadn't told anyone, not even Lindy, but somehow, Lindy had drawn it. Amy sat down beside her daughter. "Lindy," she whispered, "do you see Daddy in your dreams too?" Lindy looked up and nodded. "Every night now. He says he loves you, and he's coming soon." But not in a scary way, in a warm way. Amy closed her eyes. The ranch didn't feel the same anymore. It felt full again. Full of memories, full of love, full of something else. Something that couldn't be seen but could be felt. And in that moment, Amy stopped fighting what was growing inside her. She believed it started like a quiet storm when you couldn't see, but you could feel in your bones. Amy didn't tell everyone at once what had been happening. The dreams, the drawings, the jacket in the barn. Lindy's words that stayed strong and steady like a drumbeat in the background. "My father is coming back." But truth has a way of leaking through silence. And soon, the family began to feel it too. Something had shifted. Amy didn't say the words out loud. She didn't need to. Her eyes spoke for her. Lou was the first to notice. They were doing dishes after dinner when Lou finally said, "You seem somewhere else." Amy paused, her hands in the sink, eyes staring out the window. "Lindy thinks Ty's coming back." she said, her voice soft. And I don't know what to believe anymore. Lou dried her hands slowly and turned to face her. Amy, I know how much you miss him. We all do. But Lindy is just a child. She's dreaming. That's all. Amy nodded. But inside something pushed back against Lou's words. Maybe once she would have agreed, but not now. Not after everything. Lou added, I just don't want you to get hurt again. Amy looked up. What if it's not about getting hurt? What if it's about listening? About feeling something that's real even if we can't explain it? Lou didn't respond. For once, she had no answer. Later that evening, Amy sat with Jack in the barn. They didn't talk much. Just the sound of the horses moving, the wood creaking, and the wind outside. Amy finally said, Do you believe it's possible that Ty could, I don't know, still be near us somehow? Jack leaned back in his chair. Your grandma used to believe things like that. Spirits, signs, messages in dreams. And you? Amy asked. He sighed. I've seen strange things in my time. I've felt things I can't explain. Maybe love doesn't leave us. Not fully. Maybe it stays behind. In the things that matter. In the people we love. Amy nodded. Lindy's so sure. She says she knows. Jack didn't laugh. He didn't question it. He simply said, Then maybe we should listen. But not everyone agreed. Tim had come to the house for lunch the next day. He overheard Lindy telling Katie, Daddy's coming back soon. He said we'll ride together again. Tim's face went still. Later, when he found Amy alone, he didn't hold back. She's a kid, Amy, he said firmly. You can't let her believe something that's not real. It's not fair. Amy didn't argue. She just looked tired. Tim added, And it's not fair to you either. Amy finally spoke. I'm not the one who started believing. She is. And maybe she's not wrong. Tim didn't know what to say after that. That night, Lindy walked into Amy's room just before bedtime. She held one of her drawings in her hands. This one was different. It showed a doorway. On one side stood Lindy, smiling. On the other side stood Ty. His hand reached out, almost touching hers, but between them was a soft light. Amy asked, What is this, honey? Lindy answered quietly, It's where he waits. The place between dreams and waking. He said I'd understand when it's time. Amy hugged her tightly. No more words. Just the sound of her own heart breaking yet healing at the same time. The night didn't feel normal. Not like the others. There was no wind. No owl calling in the distance. The stars were clear, as if the sky had been washed clean. The ranch was too quiet. Like it was holding its breath. Amy couldn't sleep. She stood by the living room window, her hands resting on the wooden frame, eyes scanning the road in the distance. She didn't know what she was waiting for anymore, a ghost, a memory, a message, or maybe just peace. But deep in her chest, something whispered, Stay awake. Lindy had gone to bed early. Before falling asleep, she had only said one thing, Tonight, the gate will open. Amy had smiled at the time, kissed her goodnight, and tucked her in. But now those words were pounding in her mind like thunder. It was close to midnight when it happened. A sound, soft, distant, but unmistakable. Hoofbeats, slow, steady. Getting louder. Amy's heart jumped. She opened the door and stepped onto the porch. The cold air bit at her skin, but she didn't feel it. Her eyes were locked on the hill at the edge of the road, and there emerging from the shadows was a figure on horseback. She couldn't move. Her breath caught in her throat. It wasn't a dream. This was real. There was a rider coming toward Heartland. Amy's legs trembled. Her fingers gripped the railing. The horse was dark, tall, strong, and the figure on its back wore a jacket that looked too familiar, the same kind of jacket Ty always wore. Her eyes filled with tears. And still, she didn't move. Lindy appeared at her side. Amy didn't hear her come down, but there she was, small fingers wrapping around Amy's hand. That's him, Lindy whispered. Amy looked down, her mouth open, but no words came. Together, they watched as the horse crossed the field slowly. The figure didn't rush. It moved with calm purpose, like it knew exactly where it was going. But as the horse came closer, Amy's eyes narrowed. The figure wasn't Ty. It was someone else, a man with a rough beard, tired eyes, and a familiar jacket, but not his eyes. Amy felt her knees weaken. Lindy, though, didn't flinch. "That's not Daddy," she said quietly. "But he knows something." The rider stopped at the gate. Amy stepped forward, her voice shaky. "Can I help you?" The man looked at her for a long moment before speaking. "I didn't know who else to come to," he said. "I was traveling through the mountains, and I found this." He reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a small item, wrapped in cloth, weathered, precious. Amy took it with trembling hands. She unwrapped it and froze. It was Ty's old wristwatch, the one he wore every day, the one that had been lost the day he died. "I found it in a cave," the man explained. "There was a name inside. Amy. I figured it belonged here." Amy stared at the watch like it was glowing. Lindy stepped forward and touched it gently. "It's his!" Amy felt like her entire soul had opened wide. She clutched the watch to her chest and nodded. "Thank you," she whispered. But she wasn't thanking the stranger. She was thanking Ty. That night, Amy placed the watch beside her bed and sat in the dark, holding Lindy close. The house was quiet again, but it no longer felt empty. It felt washed over, and for the first time in years, Amy slept without fear. She didn't dream of Ty. She didn't have to, because now she knew he was already here.